You're listening to Achtung Millwall, broadcasting from the beautiful South Birmingham. Accept no substitute.
Hello dear listeners, welcome to Achtung Millwall, the number one Millwall podcast, broadcasting to you today on a fairly grey, dreary, not quite locked down, not quite anything really, Friday morning. We've got no football tomorrow afternoon. Millwall's game against Preston has been postponed due to a COVID outbreak amongst the Millwall squad, and we're seeing games left, right and centre being cancelled due to similar situations amongst other clubs. It's all a bit of a pickle generally at the moment. Whether we will or won't see a more wide kind of suspension of football, at least, who knows about wider society? We don't know. We'll have to wait and see. But anyway, I thought it might be an idea to bring you one or two bits and pieces as it's we're going into a kind of a period of no football, and I thought we'd just pick up on a few bits that have come into the inbox of Achtung Millwall over the weeks and months. I haven't done one of these for a little while, so I thought it might be nice just to do a little bit of a pick-up kind of show. Coming up later, we've got a conversation between our own Michael Avery and Sean Daly of the excellent Millwall Community Trust, one of the jewels in the crown of the club. I've had it for a little bit, and I've been looking for a chance to put it out as on a show. So this is probably the ideal chance to take. So we'll be going over to that interview later on. In the meantime, I thought I might have a little rummage through my email inbox and to say thank you to everybody that's emailed me over the weeks. I've not been the most diligent in replying. I apologise to each and every one of you, but I thought we'd pick up first of all with one of our regular correspondents from Mike Bissica. Big thank you to Mike. He actually emailed me in August, so it shows you the service level agreement I have for response times. I apologise, Mike. Apologise, everyone. But Mike's talking about the Kent Cup. We covered the Kent Cup, which was a pre-season warm-up tournament that took place a couple of times in the mid-70s. Good little pre-season tournament. It had probably a bit too much competitiveness. It was played between Millwall, Charlton, Palace and Wimbledon, if memory serves. And it was kind of in the weeks before the start of the season, to be about 74, 75, 76-ish. And I think probably Gillingham. I remember one game where Gillingham were included as the Kent Cup. And Mike is saying here that we mentioned the Kent Cup, and he remembers it being played in the 1960s. I came to the club in 72. I do remember it from the mid-70s. But Mike says it was played in the 1960s, if not earlier. He says it was always played after the end of the season, always against Charlton, and as far as he can remember, always played at Millwall. There weren't any preliminary games in this previous version of the tournament. Gillingham weren't involved. You would have thought they would have been, as the only other league team in Kent. We used to think it was a made-up competition as an excuse to get a game against Charlton and a few extra quid. That sounds very Millwall. He also mentions Billy Gray, one of our managers from the past who we've mentioned on some of our previous history shows, about Billy not getting on with directors. Mike remembers when Mickey Purser, famous chairman, owner of the car showrooms on the Old Kent Road, he remembers when Purser was chairman, if we had a bad result or we weren't buying players, the windows of his car showrooms on the Old Kent Road would mysteriously get smashed. Keep up the good work. Love the podcast. And he likes Michael Hayden and the new lad today. I can't remember, that might be Ryan. I don't know. I can't remember which show he's talking about it, because it's such an old message. Big thank you to Mike for that Kent Cup memory. As I say, I do remember it from the 70s, and I quite enjoyed it as a pre-season warm-up tournament. Quick shout out to Brett Marchant out there in Oregon. He's in the high desert of Oregon, as he messaged me. This is August. Going back a few months now, might be a bit colder and a bit harsher out there now, Brett, in the deserts of Oregon. Just a quick message to wish me all good health. Thank you very much, mate. That's wonderful stuff, and big shout out to our Oregonian Lions and listeners in the USA generally, for that matter. This is an ancient one. This is one from December 2020. Blimey, this is my response time, dear listeners. One from Matthew Richards. Hi Nick, I've been meaning to drop you a line but never got round to it till this Christmas New Year period. He's been listening for a couple of years to the show. He loves it. And to Matt, listeners, am the rational, fair, balanced, reasoned voice of Millwall. Thank you, Matt. I'm not sure that's always the best place to be, mate, to be quite honest. But what a compliment. I'll claim that one. I am the rational, fair, balanced, reasoned voice of Millwall. I can almost hear the screams of abuse on various websites around there, calling me all sorts of names, but I don't care. He loves the love and passion of the show, and my honest opinion, well, again, not sitting on a fence can be can be hard sometimes. He loves the show. Michael, Aaron, and even Harry, all brilliant. Now, each of the boys on the show bring a different voice, and what I really like about the group that we've assembled, Michael, Harry, Ryan, Mike Hayden, Neil Fissler now helping me do the history shows. They all bring different voices and different opinions, and there's a range. And each of the boys are people you can talk to and get an intelligent conversation from, and that's what I really, really like. Thank you to Matt Richards there for that email. Just a quick message from Jack Gibbons in Jersey. It never ceases to amaze me, Jack, and also to his mum and dad, Paula and Bill, all based in Jersey in the Channel Islands. I suppose I should, I kind of know it intellectually, but it never ceases to amaze me, the reach that the internet gives you, including, such diverse places as Oregon and the Channel Islands. So, yeah, big thank you to Jack for that, and he sends his best wishes to me. I'm on the mend, listeners. I mean, I've had obviously a pretty funny old year, one way and the other. The heart attack that I had in June was a bit of a strange moment because leading into it, I'd had nothing. And then you lurch one Saturday morning from being, the same person I ever was, and suddenly you go into a life-threatening position, and then afterwards it's been a recovery and nothing since. There are some days where it just seems like a really weird dream that I had. Did it really happen? It did happen, but it always has a slight sense of unreality. Anyway, I've been okay since. So far, so good. And as long as I'm able to do these shows, I'll carry on doing them. Message here from Paul Larkin, another US-based listeners. We must have mentioned the NFL and its relationship with money. He makes the point, Paul, that the NFL, the American Football League, to keep its TV audience needed to be competitive, where all clubs could achieve success, and not like the Premier League, the contrast with the Premier League, having a few elite clubs taking all the success and the rest being mateweights. So all the essence of the NFL, and for that matter, I believe baseball and I'd imagine basketball and NBA, MLB, the hockey. They have a system in America of a draft system, so the best players go to the worst performing teams from the previous season. So you don't get this build-up of, how should we put it, super talent at some clubs as against what we see now developing increasingly in European football, certainly in the Premier League, where the money and the talent are concentrated in just a few hands. Clubs have a salary cap, Paul says, to prevent rich owners from investing large sums of money in wages, and the clubs with the worst record, the same point, get the choice of the best players in the draft. The only thing I would say, I agree, and everything you're saying there, Paul, is correct. Obviously, like all of major sports in the US, they're sealed competitions. You don't get promotion nor relegation, but when no incoming clubs can become promoted to or from the NFL, they have, for every now and again, they'll have expansion franchises, which is a slightly different concept, I think. But good point, and thank you for coming back to me. It concludes his email, because whilst it's not a perfect system in the US, probably similar to what I'm ham-fistedly trying to drive at there are many things in the Premier League that they could adopt to benefit soccer in the UK. That's from Paul Larkin, based in the USA. Huge thank you to Paul for that email. Message here from Kevin McGill. And I'm going to follow up on this, Kevin. This is Millwall's Irish connections, Millwall and Irish Lions. Hi Nick, just thought I'd drop you a line. I've just finished listening to you on the Wall Talk, the club interview that I did. Brilliant interview, and it's great to hear you on the opposite side of the mic answering questions and getting a different perspective of you of Millwall. It was a strange experience, but it was an interesting, and I enjoyed doing that interview. But it's I don't want to be interviewed too often, Kev. I like to pontificate behind this side of the mic, so to speak. Kevin continues, my son and I are lifelong Millwall fans, and living here in Dublin, it makes it difficult to get to the Den regularly. Thankfully, there is Sky Red Button, and I follow, which are fantastic. We get to see most of the games now, and he's hoping to get over for the QPR game. So this was in December, early December he sent this. Your podcasts are an insight into what happens on the pitch and around the club, because one thing the TV channels don't give is a view from the fans' perspective. No, I suppose they can't really, Kev. We especially enjoy the match reports and the discussions after games. We do try and give a kind of a raw expression of raw but considered, if you can have such a combination. Now, one of the things that, in fact, there's another follow-up here. Another Irish listener, actually, Mark Uden. Mark has emailed me. Love the pod, chaps. I love the pod, says Mark. Here's a thought or question. The history of Irish football players who have played for Millwall. By far, the biggest number of internationals that we have had in a Millwall shirt have been Republic of Ireland and Northern Irish. I'm trying to weigh up how to tackle the Irish links without straying too deeply into the realm of Irish history. But if you include, and some will be screaming at me now, so I don't mean to, but if you include Northern Irish and Republic of Ireland caps, then I think it will push towards 200 international appearances for Millwall players, but with those two entities combined. Entities is a mealy-mouthed word, isn't it? Two countries, one country, I don't know. You can see how you can sink into the mire. Mark says, it would be good to know why such a historic relationship exists, and should we leverage this angle more, e.g. to increase our supporter base further. Come on, you Lions. Mark is a supporter since the time of Anton Chudakovsky, my first hero as a kid. Did he really have one glass eye? He had a squint. I don't know if it was a glass eye, Mark. That'll be another point. Maybe listeners out there can vouch as to whether he had a glass eye. I don't think he did. The Irish question is an interesting one. As I say, if you include both islands, then you talk about nearly 200 odd international appearances. David Ford now, I think, is our highest capped international for Republic, 24. I think Eamon Dunphy very narrowly behind with 22, I think, from memory. But you've got Shane Ferguson playing for Northern Ireland with 28, 29, and many others. I do intend to look into this because I think it's an interesting question. Much is made of the club's Scottish origins and, the whole kind of dark blue and white and the saltire and all the rest of it. And many fans claim loyalties to Scottish clubs as well as to Millwall, to Rangers, let's say it. I'd never quite get my head around that. But anyway, but actually in reality, the links with Ireland, the Republic of Ireland particularly, are probably stronger than any other country, apart from England, of course. So it's an interesting question. I'm going to do a little bit of delving. I'm thinking in terms of there being a big Irish community around the Elephant and Castle, historically. Don't know if that still applies, but it certainly was historically. And the almost uniform familial links that we've all got. I think we've all probably, you can say this, pretty much all got a little bit of Irish in us, as Phil Lynott once said for Thin Lizzy. Somewhere along the line anyway, since the the times of the mid-19th century. So that's an interesting question, Mark. Big thank you to Mark for that question. I'm going to come back on that. I'm going to look into that. That's an interesting point. Shout out to Alex Mitchie, who messaged me via Twitter. Nice message, really nice message actually. Hi Nick, as you can see, I'm not the best with social media. Well, that's not a problem for me, Alex. Probably generation, simple, probably the same generation. He just wanted to say how much he's enjoying the podcast. Like you, I was born in 1960, so you boomer. And I've been watching Millwall since the 1971-72 season. A great team back then, says Alex. I enjoyed your podcast on Eamon Dunphy. Millwall is a special, unique club, very much misunderstood by the establishment. I'd agree with that, Alex. Yes, I've witnessed the good, the bad and the ugly over the years. But I'm proud to be a supporter of this great club. Who can forget the scenes at Luton in 1985? Whilst that didn't go so well, the incident could easily have been another Hillsborough. That was an interesting night, Alex. I remember we got there quite late, actually. We got into the ground, but I couldn't see a thing of the game. I know that we conceded a goal. I've never actually seen the goal, so I can never be bothered to look at it on YouTube, because the crowd was so packed at that away end, and there was fencing with people clinging onto the fence so high you just couldn't see barely a quarter of the pitch. So yeah, I was there. I could see the events, shall we call them, but play-wise of the game, I didn't really see much. I gather there wasn't much to see. Listening to your podcast have brought back many memories, as my dear old mum told Alan McCleary when queuing to get tickets for the Brighton away leg in the playoffs in the early 1990s. Once you're a Millwall supporter, you're always a Millwall supporter. I agree with that, Alex. And he sends me his best wishes for health. Thank you, Alex. That's lovely. Please, it's lovely to get these messages. And every now and again, I do these little roll-up shows where we can read some of them out. So do message me. It's lovely to hear from fans, and do leave us messages on the voicemail. They always go down well. And just one final one just before we close on this bit. Message from Australia. Jamie Mack talking about this show that I did yesterday with Neil Andrews about the North American Soccer League. Jamie says, fascinating show. He was talking to his lawnmower man who does his holiday home in Australia, and he was telling me the story of how he toured the USA with the Australian national team during the time of the NASL and was marked out the game by Beckenbauer. What that would be a wonderful story, James. Similar story how you got the different kind of community groupings in football out in America at this time. His dad and this chap were Italian, and the local soccer manager knocked on the door the day after they arrived to sign his son to the local club on the basis that imported kids from Europe were far better than those local players. Oh, these are Aussie clubs he's talking about here. Have never played the game before. Surprising what you learn when you take time to listen to other people's stories, says Jamie. I dare say he's going to hear plenty more with a smiley face. Big thank you to Jamie for that. Thank you to everyone who's messaged me. We're going to take you over now to the interview that Michael did with Sean Daly, and we'll be back after the break with that.
Achtung, Millwall.
So, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good night, listeners, to another Achtung Extra in partnership with the Millwall Supporters Club current sit-down with interview range. And for this interview, we thought we'd try something slightly different. Normally, they are visuals on the website, which we will get this typed up as well. But we thought we'd actually sit down and have a proper chat with Millwall Community Trust CEO, Mr. Sean Daly. Sean, how are we? An absolute pleasure to have you on the show.
No, thank you very much, Michael, for inviting me. No, I'm really good. Yourself?
Yeah, no, brilliant. And we were just talking off air about how well the Trust is doing and some of the other teams. So we'll touch on that for the listeners we're recording. But I know we spoke to you last season as part of these sort of Achtung Lionesses chats, but this is more to do with like the MCT and how the stuff you do behind the scenes in line with the articles we do. So just tell us, Sean, because when we last spoke, it was a bit tricky with the restrictions in place, but you seem to be thriving now the restrictions are lifted, and it's a bit busier, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it was, lockdown was a bit of a shock for everyone, really. You know, we've gone from like a massive face-to-face organisation to shut down and didn't know what we were going to do. But for us, I think the pandemic was a great time for us to relook at the Trust. We met partners that I don't think we'd have ever met, you know, if there was no pandemic. So, you know, the work with the NHS, food banks, stuff we did with the councils. So we totally changed our model and looked at what we're doing. We're lucky enough we've kept all the staff, where, you know, a lot of trusts had to make people redundant. Yeah. We just cut our cloth, re-looked at what we were as an organisation. I'd only been in post really as a CEO since that October. So literally, 4 months later, we're shut down. And that gave me a chance to look at the business model and just say, look, what are we about as Millwall Community Trust? And then we just went from there, really. We just set about getting the SLT in and saying, we've got a great opportunity now to rejig the community trust, do some unbelievable work that we get recognised for, which is what it's really about. But then to sort of say, what's our focus going forward? And now we've opened up, and I would say we're nearly back to normal. You know, St Paul's is busy. The Lions Centre's not as busy because of COVID and it's inside. I'm thinking about the safety of staff and participants. So that's probably running about 85% capacity. But we've opened up some new programs, you know, like our AP program's got very big, our alternative provision, our NCS program's got big, our football development's reopened. So the pandemic, I know, is terrible, but it gave us an opportunity to relook at the trust.
Yeah. And when times are like that, you need to take as many positives as you can, really, can't you? So we'll talk back to when you just saying there, ironically, it's our second question about when you were appointed as the CEO in October 2019. You had a spell with those down the road, Charlton Athletic Community Trust, and you was their head of football development. How did the move from Charlton to Millwall come around, and what was the main aspects of your previous role that made those at Millwall think you were the right man for the job?
It weren't a spell, Michael. It was about 22 years.
I'm being polite.
Yeah, I wouldn't say that was a spell.
Yeah. I'm being polite, Sean, for the listeners who think you're obviously younger.
I'll take that as well. Thank you very much. It was. I started at Charlton when the Community Trust very first started, so there was only 4 of us, and the beast of the Community Trust at Charlton grew to like 80 odd employees. So it's massive, and I was at the very beginning, but I always wanted to become a number 2 or a CEO, and I got to like 22 years, and I worked at the academy as well at the club, and it got to those 22 years where the community trust was really changing at Charlton. It was becoming more of a corporate, and people above us were coming from other clubs. So I felt that there was going to be a glass ceiling at some time. I wouldn't be get that opportunity to become a number 2 or a CEO at Charlton. I knew the old CEO at Millwall, and I'd done some work with him, and he just tapped me up one day and just said, look, I've got a number 2 job coming up here. Would you be interested in coming over? And Millwall's always been in my heart. Like, I'm a Millwall fan. But of course, when you work for an organisation like another football club, you adopt that their football and you become fabric of the club. I thought long and hard about it before I come over, because family, been there for 22 years, part of the fabric. I could stay there for probably another 22 years and nothing to be said. But I wanted a challenge, and I came over. It put me in good stead because I just looked at Millwall and said, the trust is where Charlton were 10 years ago, but we've got different problems, and Millwall should be at the top of a community trust, and they don't get the recognition for what they're doing. So I took the opportunity to come over. The old CEO had said to me, look, I'm going to be leaving in probably 3 or 4 years. I'll get you ready to take over. So I thought, great opportunity, come over. 3 months later, I've gone as interim CEO. But I never looked back on it as well. I had 22 great years. Every day I loved at Charlton, but I've loved every day here. I loved every day. And I've got that opportunity to form the trust around what I think the club is all about: the people, the community, the supporters. I just think we've got a great opportunity to show the impact this club makes, and that's what I'm really here for now. Yeah,
and those who know you well, Sean, they know the enthusiasm you've got for the local area and the club, as you say. I'll just sort of skip us over because I was going to ask if you was a Millwall fan in the next question, but you've obviously said there that you've got sort of close to your heart. But prior to joining Charlton and around those times as well, you'd worked around the world. You'd been in the US, China, looking in your biography, Spain, Holland. You've been everywhere. What were those experiences like? And how did they sort of mould you into the person you are and, obviously where you are now?
Yeah, I mean, the American experience was unbelievable. I went out there for 6 years. I went out there as a coach. Just to do the summer camps out there. I had a friend who got me out there. Within 2 weeks, I was offered a contract at one of the MLS teams at Tampa Bay. And I had 6 great years out there working with the under-16s at an MLS team. I just loved it, different culture, different people. I was independent, I was on my own, and I just built great relationships. I learned from lots of people because there's some great people. And then when I came to Charlton after that, we became a worldwide brand, and so I ended up, we had Zenzi, who was the Chinese captain. So I ended up going out to China, doing some work for there in the name of Charlton, but for his club out there. We went out to South Africa 10 times to help up set community trusts out in South Africa. So I went all over the world, but it gave me an insight to the impact that football has all around the world. From working in the townships in South Africa to seeing young people with nothing, but their big thing was getting together and playing football. From America, seeing it wasn't their chosen sport. It was probably their 5th sport. And the impact of commercial coming in there, the Nike deals and all those sort of things to sort of get football up at the forefront. But it grounded me and gave me another aspect of what community and what football could do. I mean, I love South Africa, to work in those townships 10 years in a row. And then the year before the World Cup coming, it was just unbelievable.
Yeah, I can imagine what it was like out there, because it was a huge deal, South Africa in the World Cup, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. So just to go on now. So since joining the trust, as you said, where you thought it was and how you wanted to build it, it really has gone from strength to strength, and it's a real focal point in the community now. It does so much good work. Are you happy with how it's grown in your time in the profile? Because I mean, I think, if you're a Millwall fan, and not speaking disrespectfully to those before you or a few years back, but I think you really knew of the trust and the community schemes if you were part of the club or you as a fan. But since you've been involved over the last couple of years, it really seems to have been a bit more well known. Everyone seems to know what Millwall Community Trust is doing. Are you happy with that at the moment?
I'm glad that the recognition we're getting, and we should get it, because I just think collective as a club, we do so much work, the fans, the poppy days, the supporters, we do loads. And I just don't think the club ever got the recognition it does. And we're going to grow. We're going to grow. And, one of my things is that I want everyone to know what we do, just not here as in Lewisham and Southwark. I want everyone to know that the impact we make as an organisation to the young people around here. Yeah, I think we've got some great, exciting times coming for us at the moment. With the development of the stadium here and the possibility of us going into Kent with the new training ground, it opens up us another market, another way we can take our community trust in and make impact in those areas. But I don't think I'll ever be satisfied of where we could go, because I just don't think we get the recognition as a club that we should. Forget the trust, as a club. And I'm just going to keep knocking on people's doors and reminding them of the work that Millwall does as an organisation.
Of course, absolutely. And I was just going to sort of touch on some of the stuff you've done here. So even during the pandemic, you organised Santa runs, you donated items and presents to the NHS and patients at local hospitals. Even one day, we was involved in it, wasn't we, on Christmas Eve? Yeah. The day before Christmas, when everyone's indoors, we're all there on behalf of the trust helping out. You fed families during the pandemic who struggled. You relaunched football and other sporting initiatives for all different age groups and backgrounds. And you also work closely with the Lions Food Hub. So how important are these events to you and those at the MCT? Because, I know you say there you want the recognition, and some people would not see it as a tick box, if you will, but it's that sort of corporate responsibility, isn't it, that some companies have to do. But how passionate are you, and how important do these mean to you?
I'm always going to be passionate about the people in our area. We haven't charged anyone to come on our camps for 2 years, and we've gone out and got that funding, and we fed those young people on our camps, because they are our young people that are going to be our future. So I think it's important that as an organisation, we have that responsibility for those young people. It's not a tick box on our thing, we've got young people here, we've got families, they need the brand of Millwall, they need us to support it, and we're in quite a privileged position. We're a professional football club, and And we've got to be seen to go out there and support that community, because they're going to be our future fans. They're going to be our future leaders. They're going to be the future people that run those companies. So I'm going to be so passionate about how we can support those. And I'm going to make sure that anything that's done in the community that we can do, we'll be at the forefront trying to do that for them.
Yeah, and exactly. And I think you're, like you say, you're in such a good position. And even though you say you want the recognition, you can tell you're doing this because you want to help people as well, Sean. So, that's great to hear. So a little bit more...
I don't think it's the recognition the trust wants. I think it's the recognition the club wants. For me, it is that, and I'm happy to say this, is that, we do get a bad time in the press. We get, as a club, we get a bad time in the press. And I want to make sure that the club gets the recognition they deserve for the work they do off the pitch. We do so much as a club, during the pandemic, not many people, mentioned that all the PPE that was stored for the London hospitals was stored here at the stadium. The club put up vaccination centres at the stadium. We don't get that sort of recognition, but anything that's that we do get recognition isn't always good. Yeah,
it's never positive, and I have to agree. I know you quite well, Sean, now, and some of the work I see you do, you think most other clubs, with all due respect, would probably get a lot more sort of not even praise as a kind of backslapping thing or something to use for personal futures, but the work you're putting in, and that more people get recognised for it than we do. So I have to agree. So just to touch on some of the other areas you work with. So the MCT does work closely with the supporters club, Mill Sports Club, and you also have an involvement and help run the Mill Lionesses, and also you help with the Mill Romans as well. Working with these outfits, and with regards to the latter two, who were doing superbly. I mean, Mill Lionesses recently, at the time of recording, have just lost out in the FA Cup, but it's the first time they've made the FA Cup first round since they've relaunched. And the Millwall Romans, I mean, what can we say about them? They seem to win every league and get to the final of every cup competition they're in, and they've just started a second team, haven't they? So how does it feel working with these outfits and the supporters club, and being part of their recent successes?
I think I've tried to build relationships up with the people that can help the community, and I'm trying to make sure that our projects and the work we do reflect what our community is. The Lionesses, we've got girls football going on from an age of 12 up to 16, 18 years old, and we need an adult team for an exit route for those young players. So the Lionesses, for me, was something that we are involved in. We're trying to create opportunities for people to play sport. So I've got to make sure that everyone we work with has that opportunity. The Romans, it was something that we did at Charlton when I was there. It's a natural fit for us as a club, because it reflects our community, So I just want to make sure that everything that we do is in line what our community is about, and giving people those opportunities. As a professional club, we're in an opportunity to do that. Supporters Club have backed me on everything I've done. I mean, I think it was last Christmas, they funded all the holiday camps for the children and fed all the children. We were doing about 300 children a day. But I can literally pick the phone up to anyone at the Supporters Club and say, look, I need your support on this. And they come forth straight away. Like the Santa Dash, that will be run in conjunction with the Supporters Club to raise funds for the Community Trust. We're going to be sending people out to Africa next year to help build a school, again in conjunction with the Supporters Club, because they all buy into the work we do. So those relationships are very important to me.
Excellent. And you can actually see as well with the Romans in particular, because obviously there's a link with the Lionesses, a historic link. Even a few years back when he was in the Championship, there's the link with the RTC, and the Mill Supporters Club are Millwall fans who obviously want the best for all the club. But the Romans are a relatively new concept, if you will, for the club, inviting them in-house. But they've absolutely flourished, haven't they? And for a team, they were originally based in North London, weren't they? If memory serves. So to come sort of south of the river, outside of their roots, if you will, and just sort of re-put those roots back down here, and really the way they've grown is unbelievable. And it feels like, in the nicest possible way, feels like they've been a part of the club forever, doesn't it?
Yeah. And when you talk to them, they've so much love being part of the Millwall family, and they train at the same time as the Lionesses. So they're beginning to build a great relationship with other teams within our organisation. But yeah, and the feedback that they get from other organisations and the coverage they've had through like national newspapers and national press is great for us. But they just reflect what the club is about, that inclusivity, that playing, that enjoying. It's just, they're great.
Yeah, no, and they're a great bunch. I went to watch them play against Charlton, didn't I, a few months back, and they're actually a really good team as well. Really, I'd actually encourage those if there's any listeners who are local, or if they're on their way to a Lionesses game and they get down to St Paul's early, or if they want to hang around after the game for the Romans game, you certainly won't see a bad game of football with Mill Romans, that's for sure. Just to touch on as well with the MCT, what would you say has been, if you had to pick one, so sorry it's tricky, what would you say has been your proudest moment?
I think I summed it up when we first talked. I said I enjoy every day that I come in here. So every day just coming in here, I'm proud to be in charge of this trust. Because for me, it's not a dream come true, but it's something that I wanted to achieve. So I wanted to become a CEO, and to become a CEO of the club you support, and then to make impact in the community. I think that's going to be every day I come in. I'm proud to come in because I know that my staff are doing so much great impact in there. So I don't think there's one thing that I could say, but I think just every day coming in here.
Yeah.
I know it sounds a little bit cheesy, but I'm so proud of the work that the lads and the girls are doing. And it changes every day. Every day is something different happens here, or something else has another bit of impact somewhere. So, but then, the work that was done with the NHS during COVID, I think was unbelievable. Because at that time, we were the only club that was actually embedded with the NHS, working out of Lewisham Hospital. I think the Romans coming over to us was like some great thing. There's been loads of great achievements the trust has come, and hopefully more.
Yeah, brilliant. And where if in an ideal world, sort of money was unlimited, if you will, where can you see, or where would you like to see the trust being in the next 5 to 10 years, Sean?
I think
sounds like a job. It sounds like a job interview there. Sorry, mate.
It does. Well, first of all, let's get the Premier League, because then money will be no object if we get in the Premier League.
Yeah.
I just think that it's going to be so exciting. The next couple of years, as a club, it could be very, very exciting. With us going out to Sevenoaks, our community trust will expand. We'll still be here in Lewisham and Southwark and doing the great work, but I think then we're going to go to a different area. We're going to lift the community trust and have a community trust here, but have a community trust in Sevenoaks, different needs, different people. So I think that's very exciting. And then have a base in West Kingsdown and put out all our community work into Sevenoaks and see how the fan base grows from there. So I think that's very exciting. But I think also exciting the development here. If the stadium gets built and the units get built round here, 4,500 units, more people coming into the area, more demand for the trust and the club. I think it's so exciting as a club. If you talk to other clubs, they haven't got that vision that could happen to us.
Yeah.
So we're probably like a little club that's ready to explode. And I'm just thinking how big the trust would be when we go to Kent. We're going to appoint our first Kent officer to start work on the 1st of January.
Oh, excellent.
And that officer will be working in Kent, actually doing the same projects that we're doing here, but sort of getting ready for when that training ground's built. And that training ground's built, we have a community trust over there. So I can only see it just getting so big. If everything comes off us, I can see it.
And the thing is as well, even though you've got some Millwall fans who in the nicest possible way, they like to keep the club in Bermondsey, they like to keep the club in the Lewisham area, Southwark area. It's like you say, if you realistically want to grow as a club and you realistically want to be in the Premier League and you want to hit these heights and do well, there is going to need to be some change, isn't there? And when you look at the surveys, with all due respect, and I know it's a little bit of a joke on on Twitter when it's the whole Kent Wall thing. But a lot of the fan base is based out there. So even though you may be moving out there or doing some community trust work out there, yes, you're doing it in Kent, but you are doing it for Millwall fans.
Yeah, and it won't stop what we're doing here. You know, the work we do here will continue. That won't stop. It will just mean that now the people that are based out in Kent will see the impact that Millwall are doing out there. And there'll be different needs. You know, the needs of Kent will be very different from inner city Birmingham. You know, they're going to be very different. So again, the model of the Millwall Community Trust may look different out there. You know, we start running holiday camps out in Sevenoaks and out in Kent. Who says we're not going to find the next Jed Wallace out there? You know, because we've never had that sort of opportunity to go out and do that sort of stuff out there. You know, and there's going to be needs for a football club. There's no actual football club other than Gillingham in Kent, and they're sort of only stuck in Medway. So why not go out there? You know, and then we start running fans into the new stadium from Kent. You know, we've become a big club.
Yeah, and that's what you need. So just finally, Sean, last message. What's your last question? Say, what's your message to the fans who have supported the trust over the years? Not necessarily just through COVID, but those who have, you know, really helped out with your events and the volunteering and that kind of thing. What do you want to say to those fans?
I'd love to thank them for all their support. In all the time I've been here, I think the fans and the supporters of the trust is what makes us. You know, they drive us to make change in the area. And they support me all the way, not like volunteering and finances, etc. But they've just been there for everything I need. You know, I've got a supporters club that I can literally go and knock on the door and they'll be there tomorrow to help me. You know, anything I need done. So I'd just like to thank everyone for that and, you know, help us grow even further. Because I think we've got an opportunity as a club, not just as a trust, as a club, to be a big beast in this area. Within the community trusts and within Kent and within South London. And
I think that's a great way to leave this interview, Sean. So I'd like to say thank you for your time. Really appreciate coming on during your lunchtime. I appreciate how busy you are. You know, you're the big cheese, aren't you, the trust? So it's difficult to find time to sort of pin you down. And on behalf of the sort of Millwall fans and Achtung Millwall and listeners, just thank you for all the work the trust has done over the last months, years, sort of decades kind of thing, because it's really, really good work. The direction it's going in, some of the other projects you're involved in, you can see how it's helping the community and it's making like the lives of a lot of people in Lewisham stuff a lot better. So thank you very much, Sean Daly, for your time. And on that note, I will bid you adieu, dear listener. Arrivederci Millwall.
Thank you very much, Michael.
Achtung, Millwall.
Huge thank you to Michael and to Sean Daly for that great interview. Hope you've enjoyed this mash-up show. It's a bit of everything. I mean, I've done no notes or prelims or anything. It probably shows as I'm talking. I'm ad-libbing it whilst I'm watching the cricket go badly for England on the telly. Hope you've enjoyed it. We're going to do another show later today with the chaps to try and assess where Millwall are as we head into this lockdown-ish feeling Christmas periods. No game tomorrow. Next game scheduled to be Boxing Day. Whether that will take place or not is open to question, listeners. We shall see. I'm kind of pessimistic for the moment. I think that there are so many games being postponed at the moment that game against Swansea on Boxing Day looks a long way off at the moment. Anyway, we shall see. Thank you for listening to this mashup show. I'm going to sign off for now, and until the next show, which hopefully won't be too far away, it's Arrivederci Millwall. Bye for now.
Thank you for listening to Achtung Millwall. If you enjoyed the show, please head over to Apple Podcasts and leave us a cheeky little review. Arrivederci Millwall. Till next time.
Who do you want to watch?